It's 12.
The tendency is to want to hide those things in boxes or shove them in a closet really, really fast.
I love freedom. Freedom's great.
We're running out of time on this.
Welcome to Truth Be Told, the weekly video event for the Soul Evolution Collaborative. And happy holidays, whether you're celebrating Bodhi Day, Panchagatapati, Human Light Day, Hanukkah, Winter Solstice, Christmas, or something else. Happy holidays from the Soul Evolution Collaborative to you and your family. So glad that you're joining us tonight. Tonight's another fun night. This month the theme is Light It Up, where we've been talking all about the light that is within us and how we shine in this world. Tonight is how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb? And we're discussing all about the importance of community. Community as a spiritual practice, what we get out of being in community, and how we can get back into community as a shared value. Community as spiritual practice. What does that really mean? Well, we're really going to take a look at that tonight. We're going to dive into the benefits of being in community, the health benefits, the mental benefits, the spiritual benefits. We've learned a lot over the last decade or so or longer about these benefits, and I think we've all learned firsthand this year some of the things maybe we've taken for granted about being in spiritual community, or we have a better understanding of the things we didn't take for granted about being in spiritual community that we all yearn to get back to. And that is exactly what we're going to dive into tonight. The things where being in spiritual community helps our psyche, helps us mentally be in an uplifted place. The ways that spiritual community helps us physically. It helps our body. It helps us be more of who we are. And the ways that it helps us socially. What do we need that we can only get out of spiritual community? So these are just some of the benefits and some of the things we're going to get into this week. Really glad that you are here. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight diving into some of these things. And so sit back, enjoy Soul Evolution Collaborative, Truth Be Told.
Hope everybody's doing well. Let's just jump right in. I think no matter what your religious or non-religious background is, you're probably familiar with this week's story. A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Let's get going. At the very beginning of the story, we see Ebenezer Scrooge counting his money at his work. We also see Bob Cratchit working, but he's shivering because Ebenezer won't even pay for another lump of coal to heat the place. It's pretty cheap. Then we also see the entrance of his nephew to invite him to a party, Christmas party. We also see a couple people come in from a charity to ask for money for the poor. Ebenezer's response to all of them is, "Bah, humbug. Get out of here." He's got no time for that. Now, that night, he is visited by the ghost of Jacob Marley, who is his ex-partner, deceased ex-partner. He is now forced to walk the earth for eternity, covered in these heavy chains because of his greedy ways. He's here to give a warning to Ebenezer so that the same fate doesn't happen to him. He tells him that he's going to be visited by 3 ghosts. Well, the following night, the ghost of Christmas past comes. The spirit shows Ebenezer scenes from his earlier days where he was working with his jovial boss and mentor, sees the woman that he used to love, also remembers that she left him because his love for money surpassed his love for her, and he feels regret and sadness. Now, the following night, the ghost of Christmas present takes him to see the small Christmas feast at Bob Cratchit's house. He sees his disabled son, but he sees how there's a joy and an optimism and a love there that he's never really known. And he feels a little envious, and he's also dumbfounded how anybody without any money or wealth can be so happy. He then goes on to see the Christmas party at his nephew's house. They're having a blast without him. He kind of wants to stay and watch this because it makes him feel good, but the ghost of Christmas present pulls him away. And before he leaves him that night, Ebenezer notices 2 children underneath the cloak of this ghost. They're called Ignorance and Want, and they're starving and just look miserable. And Ebenezer realizes that this is what's going on in society, that not only are we failing the poor, that's failing all the children. And that also leads into a little feeling of sadness. And then the clock strikes 12, meaning we're running out of time on this. And this is in 1843. We're still kind of going through the same stuff now. That's crazy. All right, back to the story. So the third night, of course, is the ghost of Christmas future. This ghost shows him that somebody has passed away. There's businessmen talking about the deceased's wealth that's left behind. We see vagabonds that are selling the possessions of the deceased person. We see a couple, a family that are so rejoicing because their horrible creditor has passed away, freeing them from this burdensome debt that they could get no relief before. Ebenezer wants to know who died. The ghost then leaves him in a dark and lonely cemetery where Scrooge discovers a freshly filled in grave. He has to look at the headstone, and when he peers in closer, wait for it, spoiler alert, it's his own grave. Ah, the horror. So Ebenezer then wakes up in his bed. It's Christmas morning, and he realizes he's been given a second chance. He can still change. He runs into the street. He's a joyous person. There's celebration. He sends a turkey to Bob Cratchit's house. He buys stuff to take to the party at his nephew's house. They say he then goes on to spend money lavishly on the poor and the destitute, and he helps lift those up. What a transformation. Great story. Now, I love the idea, the image of him running into the street and seeing the celebration all around him. That's what I picture in my head when I think of community and in life. Like, that is what it's all about. And I kind of feel like even before this pandemic that we were kind of missing that joy. We'd get together in community, but it was almost like a surface level connection. Now that we're forced into isolation, we have to get kind of creative, and we're seeing Zoom meetings and stuff like that. What I hope we experience more and more is that to replace that lack of physical connection, that we compensate with a deeper connection coming from places that matter more deeply, asking questions, asking about people's past. How can we connect? This is something that I kind of want to do as another homework assignment. I want to encourage you to, once a day, at least for the next week, connect with somebody. Send an email or a text, sit down with somebody in your own household and just ask some question about what's important to them. Ask about a memory from their past. Anything to just open up a deeper conversation. Take time to really connect with our community. So I want to just wish everybody well. Encourage people to find deeper meaning. Ask deeper questions. So I just really deeply from the bottom of my heart, I want to wish you a joyous, love and light-filled holiday season. Whichever ones you practice, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, festive Kwanzaa, all of it. And a new year of a new beginning, that we don't have to wish for it to go back to the way it was, because I don't think that was really working. Let's wish for it to go into a direction where we get to be together in community, but we come from a deeper place.
So our focus this week is all about community. With the title, How Many People Does It Take to Screw in a Light Bulb? It really speaks to our understanding that there are often times in our lives and times where we need support and just the benefit of having people around us and being seen and seeing others. And so you may be wondering, why are there a bunch of boxes behind me? Well, I recently moved, and you know what a challenging and fun time that can be. But it got me to thinking about the importance of community and sometimes the things that block us or hold us back from seeking that out. Now, there's nothing more vulnerable than having friends or individuals help you move and them seeing all the stuff that you've collected over the course of your life. And sometimes the tendency is to want to hide those things in boxes or shove them in a closet really, really fast. And it got me to thinking that sometimes that's what blocks us or holds us back from really reaching out and developing community and reaching out to others. We have this tendency to want to maybe hide those things that we don't want everyone to see. We have a tendency to look at ourselves and think, my goodness, I've got all this stuff going on. There's no way I would want anyone else to know some of those things. What would they think about me? So the challenge in community, and also the most crucial part of community, is relaxing into those spaces, relaxing into this understanding that we all have those things. We all have that sock drawer that's so disorganized that we don't want anyone to see. We all have some of those really deep and painful things. And so the importance, and I think the imperative nature of community is really to bring those things to the surface, to understand that we all have them. And that the support that can be provided through connection, through community. And this doesn't have to be a large group of people. It doesn't have to be hundreds and hundreds of people in a community. But instead, your tribe, your folks, those people that you can count on, those people that you can go to in those times of struggle. And in those times of joy too. To not only heal those places, but also to bring joy and light into our life. And so that's what's super important about this idea of community. We were born for community. We were born for connection. It's inherent in our DNA. And so it may come a little bit easier to some than others, and that's okay. But knowing that in this spiritual path, in this goal of us trying to really uncover those things that serve to block us from experiencing community and experiencing joy, that can only be done in community. We are each other's lessons. And a lot of these lessons can only be learned through our interaction with others. And that is the important piece of community. So I'm really super grateful, even though a lot of my friends saw a lot of my junk in the move. I think that's kind of cool. And the support they provide, the love they provide, fills me and brings me joy. And it's a wonderful part of living in community.
Welcome to another segment of Mythbusters. Our theme this month is Light It Up, and this week we are asking the question, how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb? All of the myths this week are debunking misbeliefs, misconceptions about community. So naturally, the first myth up is not as much of a myth as it is another silly question. How many religious scientists does it take to screw in a light bulb? The answer is 0, because the light bulb doesn't exist. Not really, but the first myth up is actually an up-and-coming buzzword, toxic positivity. And it itself is not a myth, but what is a myth is the idea that thinking positive will get you everything you want. That's all you need to do, is just think positively. Well, unfortunately, there are some not so great side effects of only thinking positively. Especially when it comes to being in community with other people. And one of the things that happens when we encourage others to only think positively or expect others to only think positively, when we do this, we're actually no longer participating in a whole level of emotional experience. We're missing out on all our feelings, and especially when it comes to community, if we do this to other people, we are dismissing all of their feelings. And I know that this has happened to you. This has happened to all of us at some point, where someone else expected us to only think positively and dismissed our entire experience, whatever it was that we were going through, as if that experience wasn't real, because really we should think positively. Well, that's a myth. We do need to experience the things we're going through, and we do need to acknowledge others and the things that they're experiencing and going through. We need to hold in mind spiritual principle, spiritual truth, and at the same time be witness to the experience that's going on. Busted. So this next myth is a really interesting one. because it seems true a lot of the time, unfortunately. Especially if you are ever in leadership amongst a community, the myth is, if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. Well, that does often seem the case, however, also a myth, and I'll show you why. So many of us hold such a high regard for product over process, or destination more than journey. And what happens is we are putting all of our value into the end goal rather than the people that are helping us get there, or the experiences that we have along the way. And I think this is a very westernized way of thinking, where we have a lot of value on material possessions. So naturally, we want to have the thing complete. Another piece that plays into this is our expectations. Do we often have unrealistic expectations of other people? Perhaps. And this happens a lot in community. Perhaps we're in a meeting and everybody goes around the table and shares their idea, and it sounds like we're all saying the same thing, and everybody goes off on their own and does their piece, and you come back together and it turns out nobody had any understanding of what anyone else was doing. Turns out that there was a complete misunderstanding. I've literally had this happen. It often seems like if we want something done, we ought to do it ourselves. Or if we want something done right, we have to do it ourselves. But really, we have to ask ourselves different questions. We have to ask, what expectations are we putting on these people? What expectation am I putting on myself? Do I value this process of getting this done more or less or equal to what it is we're trying to do? And probably most importantly, if we flip this around, if we look at our spiritual practices, how are we valuing the people we're working with when we look at how we get things done? Lastly, we need to look at what we are asking of specific people. Do we have the right people in the right seats? Do we even have the right people? Are we looking at a group of volunteers who have no idea what it is we're doing and expecting them to do things they've never done before? Are we looking at a staff of people who should be trained in this? Or are we looking at a staff of people who are trying to accomplish things they've never done before? Do we have the right people? Do we have the right people in the right seats? And are we going in the right direction? Oftentimes, when I find that I think it's easier for me to do something than to have somebody else do it if I want it done right, it's because so often I'm asking the right person to do the wrong thing. If you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. This myth is busted. And our last myth up this week is independence is the ideal. Freedom. At least here in the United States, freedom is preached to us from day one. I love freedom. Freedom's great. The myth here, however, is that independence is what gives us our freedom. As a country of people, that is true. It gets a little muddy when we try and take that on the individual level. Living in a very capitalist market, it makes sense that we have gotten to that point. However, what this also does is it tends to push away the importance of community. It tends to push away the importance of being able to rely on other people, being able to live amongst other people. How do we get along with other people? And we can see that playing out a lot in our country, where we very much value our own selves over the community, over the whole. So how do we flip this around and learn to live together again, learn to be with each other again? There is a huge importance on being together, on knowing how to be together in community. The myth here is that it is better for us to be independent than it is to be part of a tribe, part of a community. Tribal living, communal living is seen as this thing of the past, this uncivilized way of being, that to be the most civilized, we should be able to live on our own. So I think we actually need to take this myth one step further on our own and strive for interdependence rather than independence. That if we learn how to live and be together, there is huge benefit, not only for the community, but for us as individuals. There is a major psychological benefit to knowing that you have a place to belong, to knowing that you have a place where you are loved, to knowing that you have a place to be seen, and to have a place to actually self-actualize, a place to show up as you and fulfill your purpose. Without a community, there's nowhere to do that. Without a community, there's nowhere to belong. There's no one to see you do the thing that you are meant to do. There's nowhere for you to fit in to do that thing. So we actually need community. We actually need interdependence. Independence, in this sense, is a myth. So independence as the ideal, total myth, busted.
Thank you for being here, and an even bigger thank you for watching it to the end.
It's our hope that this has brought you some things to think about. If you would like to dive in deeper, join us in conversation on Thursday night. We will explore these topics and whatever else might come up.
If this message resonates with you, please click like, share, and join our Facebook community, and sign up for our newsletter on soulevolutioncollaborative.org.
This is just the beginning, and we are excited to bring this philosophy to the masses.
Be on the lookout for videos, classes, workshops, and eventually in-person gatherings.
The Soul Evolution Collaborative is supported and made possible by people like you. If you feel called to pay it forward, like those who have come before us, feel free to donate by clicking the donate button or visiting soulevolutioncollaborative.org and finding the donate link on our website. As an outreach of the Orlando Center for Spiritual Living, all donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated.
We'll see some of you on Thursday night at 7.
Check out our website for more details on how to join.
Everybody else, we'll see you next week.